Welcome to Coffee with Kay, where we're going to make sure the coffee is always served strong, but it's also going to come with a side of truth, and that's truth with a capital T. The truth of God, that is. I'm here to equip and encourage you, Saint. Yep, that's right, you. And if you're not familiar with the sainthood, I want to teach you what it is, and I want to invite you to the family. So, let's get right into it.
Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days. The weekend comes, my cycle hums, ready to race to you. Monday, happy days. Tuesday, happy days. Monday, happy days. Tuesday, happy days.
Welcome back to the next Coffee with Kate episode. I am so glad for this abundance of free time to finally keep getting to record on this podcast. I really love being here with you guys, and I'm thankful for every listener that clicks play. So today's guest is Hailey, and I'm going to let Hailey intro herself in just a minute, but I want to just kind of debrief really quick on this topic because I know this can be a really hard topic for people, and I just want to give you the opportunity to stop and close this out before we get going, because today we're talking about birth trauma. I believe that in motherhood, this is such an important topic, and because in my friend circle, I've learned recently that I know so many people who have experienced traumatic births. And so I recognize that this could be a really triggering topic. And so please make sure that if this is something that's, you're not ready to listen to or can be really triggering for you, please don't continue listening, because I want you to make sure you are keeping your mental health in check and not doing harm. It's not the intention of this episode. My intention now is to just be a voice in this area, in this arena. I've realized that birth trauma extends beyond the hospitals into birth centers with midwives, with home births, in all areas, in all arenas. So I recognize that it's not just hospitals are bad and they're all terrible people, or anything like that. But I do really believe that there's a true problem in America when it comes to our maternal and infant care. And so I'm really praying that this episode will just speak into that, encourage any of you listening out there, but specifically that it will leave you with tangible ways of how to support yourself or a friend who's gone through a traumatic birth. Because Hailey's going to share some kind of do's and don'ts at the end of this episode, like I do with most hard episodes, because I really want to leave y'all with tangible ways to encourage and equip yourself and other saints. So with that, I'm going to let Hailey take it away.
Hi, I'm Hailey, and I am the mother of a wonderful 3-year-old boy and a wife to a very hardworking man. And I am so excited to be on your podcast today. Thank you for having me. So I guess I'll just start from the beginning, if that's okay. We found out we were pregnant in December of 2019. It was very exciting. And as we all know, nothing bad happens in 2020. And so the first trimester, we're excited. I'm having very bad morning sickness that is having to be treated with all kinds of stuff. But we know that this year is going to be exciting. And then we hit March. My morning sickness has ended. We are in a positive place. And then the world shuts down. Everything shuts down. Everybody knows. We've all been through it. And it was kind of a scary time. At the time, we didn't know, what healthcare was going to look like, what birthing was going to look like. We heard these stories of moms being sent in by themselves to hospitals to have birth without their husbands. And it was a very stressful and scary time. I was immensely blessed that my wonderful job, which I'm going to shout out, Mercy Ships is amazing, blessed me with being able to work from home during this time. And so we were able to stay kind of together and just kind of spend a lot of time one-on-one with each other, because Seth was also working from home or kind of hybrid at the time. And so it was a great time in our marriage, which was wonderful leading into what was going to become a rougher time in our journey. So in August, I am 9 months pregnant. We are now firmly at the tail end of the pregnancy. everything has been, it's been good, but it's been kind of, scary because, again, you've got like the uncertainty of COVID and everything. And we go in for a but the doctors that we were working with were doing great leading in. So we go in for our appointment, and it's a good appointment. And then we hear something that is basically like, okay, you need to go to the hospital right now. And we're like, oh, okay, well, I had a meeting at noon and our bag is at home, and like we didn't have it planned out. And they're like, no, we need you to get to the hospital. So we call our bosses, we head to the hospital. We're going to be induced, and we're very excited about this because this means we're going to get to meet our Rowan. And we are on board. It was Thursday at 10 o'clock, I believe, that we are told to go to the hospital. And we arrive. We didn't have any time to like go get lunch or to grab our bags or anything. We just immediately went there. And I'm induced rather. And it was then that I kind of realized like, oh, we are going to be completely alone in this. Because of the restraints of COVID, my mom couldn't be there. My sisters in arms, because my sister lives far away, but my sisters in arms weren't going to be there. It was going to be Seth and I, neither of whom have done this before. And because of the way the world had shut down, we didn't have the birthing classes. We didn't have the one-on-ones. We were factoried in and out of the doctor appointments because they're trying to keep everyone safe. And we completely understood the parameters that they were using, because at the time we didn't know how dangerous or not anything was going to be, especially for pregnant women. And so we don't have all of these structures that have been created to help parents. And then we don't have the parents and the friends who have gone through it, the experiences. So all we have are the nurses and ourselves. And the nurses are so hardworking, and they work tirelessly. Like, it's insane. I work for a medical organization, but I am not in the medical field, and I can't even begin to imagine the stress that these medical professionals put on themselves. And I so applaud them. But I also know that the way that the hospitals work is they overwork them to the point that they are not able to give their best. And when they don't give their best, the patients feel it. And when the patients are alone and scared and doing something they've never done before, it causes some issues. So, as I said before, it's 10 a.m. on Thursday, and I'm induced. And my doctor is there, and she's saying, okay, we had to get you induced, and I have good news and I have bad news. If the baby comes by Friday, the next day, you're going to be good to go. But after Friday, I go on vacation. And the company that we had gone through was supposed to have like a roster of doctors that would work with us. And every time we had gone in for like a checkup, we met a new doctor so that they would all be familiar with our case and we would be comfortable with them. Well, none of them were on rotation. So the rotation that we actually landed on was the local hospitals. And so I'd never met this doctor. I didn't know anything about them. They were very kind, but they're a doctor, and doctors don't just sit by your bedside with, holding your hand usually. They've got their rounds that they have to do. They're seeing multiple patients. And so it was, not only are we alone in this new, exciting and kind of scary situation, but now our safety of knowing the person who is going to deliver my son is gone. So I've induced on Thursday. On Friday, my water still hasn't broken. They have to manually do that. It's, I think, 3 o'clock. And I don't know how many people sleep really well in hospitals. I do not. So I got maybe 4 hours of sleep if we added them all together. Plus, I thought at any moment, my baby's going to come. So on top of sleeping in a hospital and all the people checking up on you, I also was like, ooh, this is a very exciting time. So not getting much sleep. Friday, about, I'm going to say about 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, the medicine that I had been taking for 9 months to help with my morning sickness is not provided because we didn't have a chance to go home and grab it. And so I start throwing up and I don't stop. So they're trying to get me further along. My body says, no, I am not ready to have this baby. He's not ready to come out. And we're just kind of stuck. They're kind of turning me back and forth on like the bed, try to like maybe move some stuff around. And every time they're turning me, I'm throwing up. And so at this point, we're a day without sleep. I've now been sick multiple times. And I've been in active labor, though not productive labor, for a day. And, it's a lot. I think it's a lot for anybody. But for my personality, I have some issues with anxiety. And when you're pregnant and your hormones are all over the place, those minor issues in anxiety spike right up, and you just are overwhelmed by these feelings of fear and just, honestly, that's it, the feelings of fear and helplessness. And my poor husband is doing his best, but he can't do anything. He's trying to keep me calm. He knows, he's like, okay, I've dealt with panic attacks in the past. How do I deal with them? And is trying to keep me calm. And I want to say it's like probably starting in the evening on Friday and just kind of went through the night of like this very subtle panic attack that's been going on in the background. And before we actually started inducing and everything, I did tell like all of my nurses that were on rotation, hey, I do have a history of anxiety and I do have a history of panic attacks. I'm not medicated for it. So it may show up, it may not. It kind of depends on how this goes. And it shows up. It shows up very strongly. So Friday night, late night, so actually Saturday morning, I've been in labor, active labor for a day. I've been throwing up. I've not rested now for 2 days. And I can't calm down. And I have a mask put over my face because Rowan is losing oxygen because I can't stop hyperventilating. And my nurse, who again, I do believe was overworked, and I don't think that they were necessarily at fault, but my nurse, who apparently did not know how to deal with people who were hyperventilating or having a panic attack, is like yelling at me to calm down or it's going to kill my child. And I'm just like, oh yeah, that helps. And my husband's like, you need to step away because this is not helping. And so he gets me calmed down enough that we realize it's, I think it's 4 a.m. now, Saturday morning, and we have to have a C-section. And of course, that's every mother's dream, is to just be cut in half and have her child taken from her in a very uncomfortable way. And I actually do know that there are some moms who are like, yes, this is amazing. I don't have to do any of the work. And, but it is a traumatic move on your body. It is hard because it is major surgery. And it's major surgery the day before you are now going to be a first-time mom with a newborn. So they get us back in the room, and my husband is actually running from our original birthing room to the surgery suite because he's bringing my phone and my headphones so I can watch one of the shows on one of the musicals that I like, so that I'm not paying attention to the fact of what's happening.
Yeah.
So it was very sweet. And I actually remember like the exact scene in the musical that was going on like during everything. So I'm like, when I hear that song, I'm like, oh, that was a rough night. But it was very sweet because he was there. Like my husband, I know that like a lot of women have amazing husbands. I have the best husband.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding. No, I love him so much. And he was a rock star because he was just as afraid as I was. He wasn't going through the physical pain, but he was watching me go through it. And he stayed awake. He moved my hair out of the way when I was getting sick. Like he was right there. And like again, he didn't know what to say to the nurses to get a different action happening, but he was like, we're gonna be in this together. So anyways, it's 4 a.m. We are now on the C-section table, and this is where my memory cuts out. I do remember bits and pieces. I remember that they said, you're not going to feel anything, but what they meant was that you're not going to feel any pain, because I kept telling them I could feel the surgery, because you can, you're awake during it. And they're like, well, no, what we mean is you're not going to feel any pain. Does it hurt? I'm like, no. So I'm laying back on the table. My husband has this video above me, and to try to keep me distracted. And they finally get Rowan out. And Rowan is this beautiful little bundle. And I get to turn to the left. My head turns to the left, because Seth has him right by my head so I can see my baby for the first time. And I remember thinking, good, he's okay. And then I turn to the right and I throw up again. And that's the last thing I actually have remember. The rest of this story is actually going to be from a secondhand account that Seth has told me. Apparently, shortly after seeing Rowan, one of the doctors or the nurses or someone in the surgical suite said, okay, we're going to put your uterus back in. And whatever strand of like sanity I still had snapped. Again, I don't remember any of this, but apparently I started screaming and reaching into the curtain where they have the curtain to keep you from the, keep the area sterile. And I reached in there to try to put my body back together.
Oh, no.
Because that shouldn't have happened. Why is it out? And that's when they hit a button and I went to sleep.
Oh.
And they took Rowan away from Seth. They ushered Seth out, and it was, if you've ever seen like one of those dramas on like ER or anything like that, you just think that kind of like dramatic exit. And that is how Rowan entered the world.
Oh no.
So the second time I saw my son, I was very drowsy and very confused as to where I was. And I was able to hold him after the stuff had gone through my system, but I wasn't able to hold my son for probably a solid hour after he was born, because I didn't have the mental capacity for it, and they had to knock me out. So all of that to say, like, obviously there were so many things that could have gone worse. I've heard really, really, really scary situations. We had the opportunity to be in a dangerous situation. The doctors and the nurses moved, so we weren't. And I so appreciate that. But I think the callousness of which some of the situation was handled could have been a lot kinder. Mm-hmm. And I think that would have resulted in some different things. Like I said, I didn't hold my son for the first hour of his life. I didn't feed him. My husband fed him. Thankfully, we had decided to do a hybrid of breast milk and formula. And so he was able to feed him. It wasn't like, oh, this devastating thing. But I will say that after the extreme trauma that my body had gone through, the inducing, which is always hard. It's always hard on a mom and a body and on the baby. After the labor for multiple days, the unproductive labor. I think if we had been productive, I'd been like, yes, doing this. But I think I made it to 3 or 2 or 3. Like, we were nowhere near going to have that baby. And then of course the trauma of literally invasive surgery to get him out. By the time I sat down to try to breastfeed him, I couldn't do it. Mentally, I couldn't. I was like, I can't have anything else happen to my body. I can't. And so, luckily, he took to formula very well, and he is doing amazing. And big, strong boy. But there are a lot of babies who can't. And if they had gone through, their moms are going through the same things, like just that heartbreak of thinking, like, I failed as a mother because I couldn't have you. I failed as a mother because I couldn't hold you, and now I'm failing as a mother because I can't feed you. And just that feeling of just, devastated failure. You're told, society tells you, and your friends tell you, and your parents tell you, as a woman, you're made for this. Yeah. This is what your body is supposed to do. And it's like, why isn't mine doing it? And why did everyone else have this easy go and I didn't? And so that's really hard to be like, sometimes it just is the luck of the draw. Sometimes it's the situation. Sometimes the world is, on a crazy streak and on lockdown, and the nurses are just on their last leg, and they're just trying to keep you safe. They don't have it in them to, do these other things that are, in my opinion, vital to healthcare. They just don't have it because they're just trying to survive. And as a result, you will wind up just trying to survive. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I've missed some pieces, but that covers it from start to finish at this point.
Wow.
Yeah.
So can I ask, did they ever tell you why they wanted you to be induced?
My understanding is that there was something going on with the amniotic fluid, which, it was too low, which I understood, but then I didn't understand, why we were cool with 2 days of just hanging out at the hospital. Mm-hmm. I was like, if this was as much of an emergency as we said it was, why are we just sitting here?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Which I know they wanted my body to try to do it. They wanted to let see if my body would do it. But by 11 o'clock Friday night, I think I was at a 2 because I specifically asked to be checked again. And I cried when they told me that we weren't far. And so I think there was a underlying cause, but it didn't seem like we had any actions after it, if it was that big of an emergency. But I'm not a medical professional. It could have been that they just needed us there in case something got worse, which we were able to get him out because it wasn't getting better. So, but it wasn't like a scheduled inducing. It was something's going on. We need to at least try to get him out now. So,
wow. And how many weeks were you? Do you remember?
Oh, I'm not going to remember the weeks. Let's see. He was estimated, or his due date was September 4th, I believe. Either 2nd or 4th, and then he was born on the 22nd. So it was about 2 weeks early.
Interesting.
From his due date.
Hey, Coffee with Kay listener. Thank you so much for supporting my podcast. I know this is new, commercials, but I just want to tell you, anytime you listen to one of these commercials and shop through my affiliate link, not only does it keep this podcast running, it also goes back to supporting my family just a little bit. So I just want to say, thank you for listening, thank you for your time, and thanks for clicking on those ads.
Wow. So did you ever have, after the fact, after you had your baby, years, months, weeks, whatever timeline, did you ever learn about interventions or induction, or just being able to understand the process differently from what you were told from the doctors or anything like that, if that makes sense?
I never did my own research into it, simply because I went for my 6-week checkup and was basically told any babies you have going forward will be C-section babies. The way that my body responded to birth just said, yeah, it's not happening. Which, to be fair, body had never done before. Right. So we were asking a big lift of it. And when I went in for my 6-week checkup, she said, if you have any other kids, they're all going to be C-sections. We're just going to schedule them in because your body didn't like what we did. And so at that point, I was like, with that information, and not only that information, there were outlying factors. I went to my husband and kind of was like, okay, so this is what would happen if we decided to have another child. And we didn't do a whole lot of research past that. I know that I've had friends who been like, well, I'm sure that there are other ways to do it, but we will probably be one and done. And so the extra research is not really needed in our case. But I do know that there are other ways to do, especially if you're like induced or whatever. There are other ways to advocate for yourself, because you can ask for a nurse. You can ask for these different things, and I didn't know that was a thing,
Right.
because I had a nurse I did not like, and apparently I said that when I was a little bit loopy, because she did not come back on rotation.
I love that you said that word, because
Yeah, that's something my husband told me yesterday.
that's hilarious. I had a bad nurse with my first baby, and there's a couple things that you said that really struck me that I'm like, oh, I've never thought of it that way. One, nurses being overworked and stressed out. Or I remember my nurse with my first baby, she was so unkind, and I was also panicking, and she was like yelling at me and just like belittling me, and I was like, this is not helpful. But I never really stopped to think, like, maybe just hypothetically, maybe she just came from a room where the baby didn't make it. Just like, like, I don't know. Who knows, right? But that just kind of made me stop and think, like, okay, I have no clue what that nurse was going through. So we just have to let it go, and then, like, advocate to do better, for, like, advocating for nurses, advocating for parents. And so then I love that you said too, because that was another big word that I learned after the fact, of being your own best advocate in the delivery room, outside of the delivery room, where that's just never presented as an option, I don't feel like, where you're not necessarily told, oh, remember, this is your baby in your body. And so if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. You can go somewhere else. And that there are other options. You can ask for a different nurse. You can go talk to the shift manager and ask for a new nurse, or fire your OB, or get a second opinion, or whatever. And so, yeah, that just also too strikes me that it seemed like the perfect storm, So if he came at those dates, like you were like 38 weeks, the average first-time mom has her first baby naturally at 41 weeks, I think in 2 days. And so it was like, oh, yeah, your body was totally not ready. And that definitely should have been taken into account, that, like, for the induction, you probably wouldn't have been a good candidate. And so, like, they could have bypassed so much of your trauma. But, like, we don't know that, especially as a first-time mom during the worldwide pandemic. Like, that just doesn't seem fair to you. It doesn't seem like you were given the tools and resources that you deserved to make the best yes with your husband.
Yeah. There were a lot of areas that could have been improved just by having knowledge, like you said, just knowing, like, okay, what do we do here? I think one of my weaknesses as a person in general is I want to trust the people that I'm paying. So if I'm going to the doctor and they say, you have the flu, and I'll be like, okay, I have the flu. Let's go get some NyQuil or whatever we need to treat the flu. And so I'm like, I'm paying these doctors that have been recommended to us from multiple places. And so I'm going to just kind of, I think everybody does this. They're like, we're going to just have to trust, because we don't have the expertise. And I don't know about other moms. I work full time. I don't have an additional 40 hours a week to do my own research on top of, whatever else was going on at the time. And so you're just having to put your lives and your child's lives in the hands of these people that you're hoping their education and their experience will pull them through. And sometimes they do wonderfully. Sometimes they are just the perfect perfect fit. And then sometimes they go on vacation and you're just like, oh, cool. Who is this person that's suddenly right in my business? I've never met her before. We get to meet and her face goes immediately into a very private area. So it was a very perfect storm. Exactly what you said. It was the perfect storm for just the most uncomfortable of experiences.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that because I know that that's not an easy story to tell. And is there anything I love to like how fond you are of your husband, and so that you had that good support. What was that like after the birth, like postpartum? Um, could you talk to us about what it was healing from that experience, or like kind of recalibrating after going through all of that trauma?
Sure. So sorry, I'm kind of gathering my thoughts. So I would say that the most healing part of the post birth is having your tribe. Um, I think the most healing part of post trauma is having your tribe with you. My husband is my partner. He is my helpmate. We are equals in our relationship. We alternated times that we were getting up with Rowan. When Seth went back to work, I would go to bed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and wake up at 10. He would go down at 10 and wake up at 6. And then like we just alternated. And then on days we just couldn't do it anymore because being first time parents is hard. My mother-in-law would bring a blow-up mattress and sleep in Rowan's room and
sweet.
give him food and be up with him when she's amazing. She still comes once a week and spends time with him because like she is like, we want to have one-on-one time. So it was amazing then and it's amazing now. But that was a big part because I think I think the unfortunate situation for a lot of moms is they are or they feel like they are in it alone. You have, of course, single moms who are doing this all by themselves, which, oh my gosh, prayers and kudos to you ladies, because I couldn't imagine. You're pulling off something that I do not have the capability to do. You have the moms who are married, who maybe their spouses are working overseas, maybe they're in the military, or maybe they're at a job that they can't be an equal supporter at home, and they struggle on their own as well. And I encourage if it's possible to bring in your tribe, whether that's your best friend or your sister or your mother-in-law, or say, husband, you're here on the weekends, I need you here on the weekends. Because that was the biggest part. I don't know, I won't get too graphic, of course, but like I had a C-section. That means from tip or from side to side, I am cut. They suture. I can't remember the actual word. They stitch you back up, but you are cut from hip to hip.
Wow.
They bring out everything to get him out, and then they heal it. I had gallbladder surgery, I think 4 or 5 years before Rowan, and the cut in order to get the gallbladder removed was about an inch because they're able to go in and they're able to do with their little teeny tiny tools. Well, Rowan's not an inch. He was 7 pounds when he was born. So, they're having to get him out. So it is a big cut. Your muscles are torn. Every part of you is torn because of what has happened. And whereas if you have a natural birth, there is a recovery, a much needed recovery, but your body also is like, this is a natural thing. I will recover from this natural thing. Most of the time, there are the outliers that doesn't work. This is not a natural thing,
Right.
and it is very hard on the body. And so, getting up to feed my child was hard. And then I did have, because we just like to come in threes when it comes in bad luck in our household, I did have the week after he was born. Rowan was 7 days old, and I had a issue with my back on my tailbone, and I had to go in and get a minor surgical a minor surgery there, and so I had stitches on both sides of
Oh
me,
my goodness.
and I was taking care of a newborn.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So if I hadn't had my people, if my mother-in-law hadn't been there, if my mom hadn't have been there, if my husband hadn't have been there, I don't think Rowan and I would be here, because it wouldn't have happened.
Wow.
But that would be
great.
the biggest thing.
Yeah. Having your tribe.
And I also know that like some people don't have those people, because I know that like people come from different lifestyles, and sometimes it's just not easy to connect, or maybe they're far away. Then try to find at least a commonality. There are Facebook groups and things like that, if only to have some emotional support.
Yes.
So, but that's my biggest suggestion when you have trauma, is to be like, okay, people who love me, time to show up.
Yes. Oh, that's perfect. I think that's like the perfect bit of advice. I really can't think of really anything else that you could say that's better than that, because it is so right. And I think in our culture, we're having a hard time in the motherhood realm with community, with friendships, with longevity in friendships, with healthy family dynamics. And so it goes both ways. It goes, one, seeking it out, but two, other people making sure that they're stepping up and doing their part to be a help and to be a support. And I definitely want to call that out too, because I 100% stand behind that. And I think that like that's been a really huge goal for me going into this new year, of recognizing where I can be a better support for friends and family alike. And like this year, reflecting on 2023, realizing how so many people like stepped up and supported me when I needed it. And not that it's like quid pro quo, but I never say that right. So, but not like it, tit for tat. But just that, like, you see how important that is and how beautiful that is. And it's like, wow, I want to be a part of that. And so I think that's such a great piece of, like, a great way to cap this off. Just some tangible do's and don'ts of being a resource to others, sharing our experiences with each other so that we can reflect. And if we're like going forth with growing families, that we don't have to go through it again if we don't have to. But then also, just leaving each other equipped with the reminder that like friendship and community is so crucial, and like our spousal relationships. So I love that, how you guys had your night shifts set up, and that your husband came and supported you and your mother-in-law. That is such a blessing. That's such a gift.
Yeah. I will say also, because kind of in the same vein of our last conversation, community is key. And the best part of community is everybody is so different. So my story has trauma. It has some rough edges. I have friends who have had the most beautiful, perfect birthing stories, and their stories are great, and my story is great. And saying, you know what, we both had different approaches, or different experiences, I mean. And then when it comes to like actual parenting, like, hey, we might have different approaches, but our end game should be raise a kid that loves Jesus and is kind.
Yes.
That's it. That's our end goal here as parents.
Right.
And so to just be an open ear and kind to one another. If your perfect, all organic, wonderful child is rocking it, then you are doing amazing. If my Twinkie loving 3-year-old is doing great, then all right. Like, we're all going to have different approaches. We're all going to have different experiences. And knowing that as long as we are all trying to raise kids that honor God and love people, then we're in the right direction.
Yeah. 100%. And so that's why I'm so loving this episode. It's so beautiful, because I feel like in my experience of motherhood, um, I feel like the pendulum can swing one way or the complete opposite way. And so just learning that there is a sweet middle. And what I've learned now to tell friends is like, the goal is that you come out healthy and the baby comes out healthy. However, the baby gets out, it does not reflect on who you are as a person. It does not reflect on your body. It does not reflect on your worth. And I know that that was something that I really struggled with after my first, where I was like, oh, I failed. Like I wasn't able to have a natural birth. I didn't, like, what's wrong with me? And learning with the subsequent births, like that is so off kilter. But I do think that, especially on social media, there are people that feed into that. And it's not helpful at all. Because, again, at the end of the day, the goal is we want everybody making it out alive. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Hard stop. Did we accomplish that? Okay.
Yeah.
Then we did it. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's room, I think, specifically in the healthcare area, there's room to grow in just bedside manner, but their job is to make sure you leave the hospital alive.
Right.
And that's their first and foremost focus. So,
yeah.
So I think it can apply in multiple areas.
100%. Yes. So thank you again for coming on the podcast episode. And thank you for sharing your story. I really hope that this blesses other women out there who might be listening to it. Just knowing that you're not alone and you're not broken, and that there's room to grow. There's always room to grow. And also, like, if you know better, then you can do better. And that there's always so much grace for yourself. If you didn't know, how could you have an option to do something different? And that, yeah, as moms, we're all in this together. And I love that you said, too, our goal is to raise kids who love Jesus, who honor the Lord, and who will be kind to others. Because that's our great commission. And at the end of the day, too, that is all that matters. That's all that matters. And so just thank you again so much, and for sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Gray sky, hello blue. There's nothing can hold me when I hold you. Goodbye, gray sky, hello blue. There's nothing can hold me. There's nothing can hold me. Goodbye, gray sky, hello blue. There's nothing can hold me when I hold you. Goodbye, gray sky, hello blue. There's rocking and rolling.